Well, here we are. It is a very special edition of Jonesing for Football as we enter the summer months here and we take a look back at the Big Green Notebook and the quarterbacks in this 2023 National Football League draft and where they wound up. Bill Jones along with young Cody Winstead with his Jonesing for Football sign over his right shoulder, his Jalen Hurts jersey over his left shoulder. And Cody, look who we have here, fresh off his elliptical. We've got Babe Laufenberg. Welcome, Babe.
Welcome, Bill. Welcome, Cody. And just to let you guys know, you make my workout go by a lot faster because, yes, I jump on the elliptical. And quite honestly, I always tell myself, I'm going to stay on as long as you guys go. And I love it when you have the 49-minute segment because it forces me to get into shape.
We'll see. Let me just say, I'm trying to keep our podcast closer to 30 minutes, but Bill Jones just keeps writing in that big green notebook. So they have extended to 40, 45, 50 minutes recently. So you actually owe Bill a thank you for all that.
Well, Cody, you are the producer. A producer's favorite word is rap. And Bill is talent and he wants to go on. He wants to expound a little bit on what he is saying. And I got a quick revelation for you boys. I'm going to pull back the curtain. I'm in my living room. There's a cockroach. I swear to God, the size of a squirrel in here. And I hate any of that. I hate snakes. I hate mice. I hate bugs. And so if you hear me shriek, I never got him killed. So if he may be running along the floor. So if you hear me shriek, that's what happened.
Just a side note there. That's what we get out of Babe Laufenberg. What I want to know, how many cockroaches are in this quarterback class here in 2023? That's what we're going to get over the course of the next 49 minutes here on Jonesing for Football. See if we hold me to that. Maybe we'll go less than 49 minutes. Now, in fact, Babe, maybe you tell us when you're done with your workout. And that way we'll know when to stop this edition of Jonesing for Football. But Cody, what are we going to do here with Babe?
Well, gentlemen, we're going to talk about the rookie quarterbacks. And Babe, you've studied the entire class. So we're going to get your thoughts over the next 49 minutes, according to Bill Jones. We're going to run through Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson and the rest in just a minute. But we want to start with a big picture question for you about rookie QBs. Obviously, you played quarterback in the league. You're the Cowboys radio analyst right now. You still teach some young quarterbacks, if I'm not mistaken, there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So you're very knowledgeable. My question for you, do you prefer rookie quarterbacks start the season on the sideline where they can learn from a veteran like Aaron Rodgers did, like Patrick Mahomes did, or if they're thrown into the fire like Russell Wilson or Troy Aikman, because we've seen success stories from both philosophies?
Yeah, I personally would sit that guy, and I'll give you two great examples. Donovan McNabb, right, taken number 2 in, I believe, the 99 draft. You know, he sat and watched Doug Peterson get the crap beat out of him, right, for the first 10, 11 games. And Andy Reid then put him in when he had a chance to see things from the sideline, get a feel for things. Then what does Andy Reid do in Kansas City after he drafts Patrick Mahomes?
Same thing.
Sits him for the entire year. Mahomes played the final game of the season, played very well. They said, okay, we got something here. Obviously, they trade away Alex Smith. So I think that helped Patrick Mahomes. Now, Mahomes is probably so good, he was going to be just fine anyway. But and Bill, as you mentioned, I was here for as you were here in Dallas, I was on the team. You were covering the team in 1989 when Troy Aikman just got, again, the crap beat out of him. And he goes 0-11. It's funny because that team went 1-15 and everybody says, wow, Troy only won one game his rookie year. And I said, no, Troy did not win one game. Steve Walsh did. He was 0-11. And that can ruin a quarterback. I mean, that can just, you never recover from some of those things. Not only the beating you take, but then obviously the media is going to be on you. He's not the guy. And that was happening here, as you know, Bill. There was a big clamor for, oh, well, Aikman's not the guy. They need Steve Walsh. They need this. And clearly he was the guy. He was a special personality, if you will, that allowed him to still overcome it and become a Hall of Fame quarterback. But I think a lot of guys never recover from that.
Yeah, the amazing thing about it was they not only drafted Troy Aikman, but then in the supplemental draft, they take Steve Walsh, who, of course, Jimmy Johnson had coached at Miami. All right, let's dive. Go ahead.
By the way, Bill, which sat very well with Troy Aikman after he was drafted, and they get a look at him. And the supplemental draft, as you recall, was like in June. So they said, okay, we like this guy so much. Let's spend a first-round pick on my quarterback that I had at Miami. Yeah, Troy loved that one, just so you know.
Did he love that one, or did he love that one as much as he loved the decision to start another Steve Berline in a playoff game at Detroit a couple of years later?
Yeah, that was 1991, and Steve Berline, as you recall, won 5 in a row. Troy was out with a knee injury. They were 6-5 at the time, and Berline comes in, wins 5 in a row, goes to Chicago, beats the Bears there. And Cowboys ultimately lost to Detroit the next round. But yeah, that didn't sit too well either with him. But you could certainly understand that, because you're going with the hot hand at that point.
And then Troy became the hot hand right after that,
Yes.
and the Cowboys won 3 of the next 4 Super Bowls. All right, what about the top draft pick in this draft? There was a lot of debate about it leading up to the month of April. And then a couple of weeks before the draft, it became fairly clear that the Carolina Panthers were going to draft Bryce Young, the quarterback out of Alabama, #1 overall, which they did. I know that you've taken some meticulous scouting notes on all these quarterbacks we're going to bring up here. What do you got? What do you have on Bryce Young?
I did take meticulous notes, and let me just say up front, I always say you can't draft them from your couch. So we sit here as fans, media, whatever, you look at these guys on Saturday and you say, oh, I'd take that guy over that guy and that guy over that guy. We don't have the ability, like teams do, scouts do, general managers do, to go in and find out what the guy is all about. So just that right up front, I have to say, I don't have the information available to me that these teams do. So I'm going on just what I see on tape. And you know what? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you shouldn't go talk to their 8th grade, volleyball coach to find out about the guy. Just look at the tape and say you can play or you can't. But we'll go Bryce Young. CJ Stroud would have been, by the tape, my pick. I just thought he was kind of a bigger version of Bryce Young. But Bryce Young, we all know, size. He's going to be an outlier. And you can point to Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray ran a 4.3. So he's a different cat. But my Bryce Young, quick release, accurate, good balance, resets his feet nicely, good touch, tough. And there's a misnomer that because he played at Alabama, he never got hit. You can watch games where he is throwing the ball while getting hit. And there are a couple of games in there where he was getting hit a lot and just stood in and made great throws. Everything that I hear about this kid from the people that I know who are connected to Alabama football, they say his processing is off the charts. So he does have that ability, again, that I can't see on tape. You like where he goes with the ball, you like all that, but they're saying this guy is all about it. So that's a big plus in his favor, obviously. The other thing, guys, that I think he really is going to have working for him, going to Carolina, he's got Frank Reich as the head coach, and he's got Josh McCown as his quarterback coach. Now, this McCown's first year of coaching at the professional level. He coached his kids, I think, in high school, but I think this guy is going to be a superstar coach. If he stays in it, wouldn't be a bit surprised that 3-4 years down the line, he'll be the hot commodity as a head coach. But really love the fact for Bryce Young that he's going to have Josh McCown and Frank Reich working with him.
And Andy Dalton also is in that quarterback room as well.
Yeah, and sometimes, hey, that guy can be very valuable. You just asked Troy Aikman. He would have never had the career he had if it wasn't for Babe Laufenberg those first 2 years.
Right.
Well, he may not say that, but we know it.
That's funny. A couple things just to comment off of what you said, because I agree a lot with you, Babe. We talk about the processing of Bryce Young. I was reading an article about him from rookie camp and OTAs, which have already started. A quote from Andy Dalton about Bryce Young. He said, he just has got a good understanding of the game of football. As an example, today we had a script and one of the plays was written wrong. And Bryce brought it up and said, hey, isn't this supposed to be this instead? And he ended up being right. So there's your processing and just intelligence in Bryce Young. Let me talk quickly about the size, because this is obviously a huge red flag for a lot of people. That was the number one reason I had CJ Stroud. I was with you. I had CJ Stroud as the number one quarterback. But how much does 5'10", 204? And I'll tell you this, I was at the combine.
Yeah.
I have no idea how he weighed 204, but how much does 5'10", 204 scare you?
It scares me because it's an outlier. And the other thing, I think he played at Alabama at about 185, 190. So he put on a bunch of weight to go get weighed in for the combine. So he's probably truly going to be more of a 190, 195 pound athlete. And here's the thing. I just don't think top of the draft, you draft outliers, right? And that's an outlier. There aren't, you can point to Russell Wilson, but he ran a 4.53 and he's a thick lower bodied guy. Russell Wilson is. And these are exceptions. And let's go back. Russell Wilson was taken in the third round. Now, clearly he should have been a first rounder as we have seen his career develop. But again, a top of the draft, first pick in the draft, I don't want an outlier. And let's just face it, 5'10" for quarterback is an outlier. And I'm always tickled too. Drew Brees was 6 feet. I believe did he measure straight up 6 feet at the combine?
I would have to go back and run.
Yeah, I think he was, but anyway, we all know he's not 6'4" and 240.
Right.
And everybody points to Drew Brees and they say, well, Drew Brees, hey, there's a Hall of Famer. And I'm like, that's great. He was drafted in 2001. Okay. So you're going to tell me we have a 22-year gap here to find the next guy? And again, that's not to say Bryce Young can't do it. I'm pulling for him. Seems like a great kid, all the above. But again, he's an outlier.
And I've got the combine results for Drew Brees called up. He actually measured at the combine 6 foot and 1/4 inch tall.
There we go. There we go. 6 1/4. And you know what's funny about Drew Brees? Everybody keeps talking about he was a second round pick, and he was, but he was a 32nd pick in that draft. So in today's NFL, you would have said he's a first rounder, right? Much like Lamar Jackson.
And the other thing, he was 213 pounds too, not the perhaps 190 pounds that Bryce Young was playing at Alabama. What is it that you like most about Bryce Young's game?
Well, his accuracy. And to me, that's the number one thing for a quarterback. And as we all know, there are 100 things that the quarterback has to do. You give me a receiver, and if you say he's fast, he gets in and out of his breaks, and he's got great hands, we're done, right? He's a first rounder. That's all I need to hear. But those quarterbacks, as we all know, hey, we know it's not an exact science. And I always bring up John Elway, right? Nobody knows what a quarterback looks like, sounds like, feels like, smells like, walks like more than John Elway. And he just couldn't get it right in Denver, right? I mean, they got it right when they signed Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning was already fairly well established in his NFL career by that point.
Exactly. I'll say this about Bryce. I think if he was 6'3", we would be talking about him in the same class as Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck, these guys that can't miss.
Right.
Do you agree with that, babe? Do you think Bryce has kind of this potential? Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I played high school basketball, and if I were 6'9", there's no doubt in my mind I would have been in the NBA. But I wasn't 6'9". I was 6'3", and you didn't see a whole lot of white power forwards in the NBA playing at 6'3". So yeah, well, it'd be great if he were 6'3", 6'4", he's not. So It's a moot point, right?
Does he have Pro Bowl or All Pro potential at 5'10"?
Let me go back to one here, Cody. So my son Luke, he was 6'4", ultimately got to about 6'4" and 240. He had a buddy of his that he played in high school with, a kid named Justice Lee. And Justice was a good wide receiver, and he could run. And Luke said to me, Dad, if I had Justice's speed, Saban would be recruiting me. And I said, Luke, you're exactly right. And I said, you know what Justice is saying? If I had Luke's size, Saban would be recruiting me.
Yep.
And the guys that are 6'4", 240 and run 4'5", Saban is recruiting.
That's right. Calvin Johnson, that's who it
There,
is.
yeah.
All right, earlier, Cody, I believe, said that the difference between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, why he likes CJ Stroud better than Bryce Young is the size. But we truly know the reason he really likes CJ better than Bryce Young is that he's an Ohio State Buckeye. But as we transition to the Buckeye, now we get a neutral observation from an Indiana Hoosier about this Ohio State Buckeye. And you've already said that you would have taken CJ first, but what is your assessment? What are your notes on CJ Stroud?
Well, my notes on Cody Winstead are that he is biased. So don't believe anything he says about any Ohio State player. I actually was listening to that podcast, by the way. Okay, so my CJ Stroud notes, and these are just sort of scatter shooting, if you will. Go look at the Georgia CFP playoff game. He was unbelievable. Great touch, good smooth delivery, which is important. Poised, playing with better wide receivers than he will ever have in the NFL, because as you guys have pointed out, he's going to have played with 5 first-round receivers at Ohio State. He will not have that. he will not have that at Houston. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, that's what I got. Okay. So there we go. Those are my CJ Stroud notes, but I really liked him. Again, I'm not privy to what the scouts know about these guys, how he processes, how important it is to him, all that stuff, but very impressed with the way he threw the ball, hung in there. And again, he was similar to Bryce Young. They're all different. The only difference is he's 6'3" and 214. So you're going to give me the 6'3" guy or the 5'10" guy who are similar in my opinion, in ability. Give me the 6'3" guy.
I know Cody wants to jump in here, but okay, you're in this situation with Houston right now. And I think during OTAs, Davis Mills may have been taking the first team reps right off the bat there. How would you handle a CJ Stroud in that situation in Houston where you have Davis Mills as the incumbent quarterback and you got Case Keenum on that roster as well?
I happen to be a bigger fan of Davis Mills probably than most. That was just a hard place to play quarterback. It was a hard place to play football in Houston for the last couple of years. I let Davis Mills, excuse me, he's my Doug Peterson, right? I'm going to let, like Andy Reid, I'm going to let Doug Peterson take the lumps early on. I'm going to let Donovan McNabb watch, put him in there the last 6 games when everything isn't on the line. And here we go. And I think that would be my approach down there as well. I don't want CJ Stroud to get buried. I'm hoping he's going to be a 10-year player for me. So why ruin it by just having him demoralized in the first 6 weeks of the season, which, as we said, can happen.
I saw a headline yesterday. Davis Mills does not believe he's going to mentor CJ Stroud. Davis Mills says, I'm competing for this starting job. Since I was drafted in the NFL, I've been in the competition and nothing changes now. So that's Davis Mills' approach on it. Let me ask you about Stroud, babe. When I saw him, we always look for these superpowers from these young quarterbacks.
Right.
And I think CJ Stroud's is his accuracy. He calls himself a ball placement specialist.
Yeah.
Did you see that when you watched tape on Stroud?
I was also a ball placement specialist. I just happened to place the ball in the hands of the other team a few too many times. But no, I think, again, very accurate. And guys, I always laugh when people will say, fill in the quarterback, right? Could be a high school player, college player, doesn't matter, pro player. Hey, he's big, he's tough, really handles the offense. He does this, he does that. He's just not real accurate. And I'm like, okay, well, then he can't play quarterback. So accuracy is at the top of the list of those physical traits. If you're not accurate, if you can't hit the tree, I always say, if you can't hit the tree, just standing there, we've got issues, right? And when I do work with some of these younger quarterbacks, as you guys know I do, I always tell them, we're going to just stand here until we can hit the tree over and over. And then once we can do that, then we're going to move the tree. And then once you can hit the tree that's moving, then we're going to move you. But until we can just hit the tree, we're not going anywhere. So getting back to the accuracy, it's at the top of the list. You know, if you're not accurate, especially in the NFL, because the coverage is so tight. The balls that got maybe knocked down in college, they're going to be interceptions when you get to the NFL. So you talk about ball placement specialist, Cody, which I love. And I heard you on the podcast and I got a big chuckle.
Mhm.
We're inventing all these words for, accuracy, ball placement specialist, whatever. I always love the acronyms too about quarterbacks. It's the PPP. It's like, what's PPP? Poise, platform, and productivity. I'm like, okay, do we really need these acronyms? And some of them go on for 10. You got 10 letters to start all this stuff. No, just let's drop back. Let's hit the tree.
All right. There was much talk about what the cognitive test, the S2 cognitive test that NFL teams are using now, and companies are using across the nation as well. Brock Purdy apparently aced it last year, and so apparently, reportedly, teams were putting more stock now into the cognitive processing test, and it might have affected things as far as C.J. Stroud's concerned. May not have. He went number 2 overall to the Houston Texans. How much stock do you put in tests like that, or going back to the Wonderlic test?
Well, the first thing I would tell you is don't take the test for a score. You do like I did in college. You take everything pass, fail. You don't get a score. Now, the Wonderlic test is interesting. I believe I took one. They say you get a 6 if you can just spell your name right? And I got a 5 because Laufenberg is a very difficult. That's a lot of letters in there, right? But I mean, I think all this stuff, Bill, you use it all. You use the trainer, you use the coaching staff there, you use all that stuff. You use everybody you can get your hands on, you use, but it's all just information to file in. To sit there and say, well, the guy didn't score on the Wonderlic test, but if I watch him play and I see him process and the guy's accurate, and use all those things we're looking for, then how closely do I look at it? Probably not as close as most. Again, my favorite saying for kids coming out, don't overlook productivity. And that is, well, yeah, he completed 82% of his passes, but he had this guy and their offense was this. And it's like, yeah, but nobody else completed 72%. And this guy's 82%. I remember Bill Parcells would always look at the D3 and D2 schools for punt returners. And hey, Dave Meggett was one of those guys. But if a guy averages 18 yards a punt return, I want to take a good hard look at him. I don't care if he was at an NAIA school or a D3 school, whatever it was. If a guy had 7 return touchdowns and he averaged 18.2, I'm going to take a good hard look at him, going back to don't overlook productivity. I think Tony Romo was that guy coming out, right? Yeah, he threw for 12,000 yards and he was the Walter Payton Player of the Year, but he went to Eastern Illinois and blah, blah, blah. And no, the guy was the most productive player, and in his level of play, let's take a good hard look at this guy. And obviously we saw what Tony Romo became, which, by the way, for the snarky ones out there, was a very, very good quarterback.
Of course. Okay, babe, I want to ask you about this about Stroud before we shift gears to Richardson. Yeah. You mentioned Bryce Young getting a couple quarterbacks around him, head coach Frank Reich, Josh McCown, who I'm with you. He almost got the Texans job the last couple of years as a head coach. Now he's a quarterback coach. So I think a lot of people feel the same way. He's going to be a superstar. Anthony Richardson has an offensive head coach with the Colts. CJ Stroud has a defensive head coach with DeMeco Ryans. Now, let me ask you your thoughts on that and how that could maybe help him or maybe hurt him. Because if it's me, at this point, I'm going all offensive head coaches for one reason. If the OC is good in Houston, he's going to leave, and then CJ's going to have to learn a new offense.
Well, the thing I'll say about that, it can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's great to have that offensive head coach, but sometimes that defensive head coach, if there's a big if he stays out of the offense, that can be beneficial. Because you're going to have an offensive coordinator, you're going to have a quarterback coach, you're going to have all these people that are going to teach that quarterback, right? And if that defensive coach stays out of it, that can be a very successful formula. Now, if the defensive coach wants to jump in in the game and it's 3rd and 3. And he says, throw the option route to Joe Blow. It's like, that is a struggle. That is a major struggle. So we'll just see how how it plays out down there. But so again, it can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes too, I remember Bruce Arians when he took the Tampa job, right? Byron Leftwich was his offensive coordinator. You got all these guys, and he said the quarterback needs to hear one voice. Bruce Arians said, I'm not going to jump in. Now, Bruce Arians was a quarterback coach, quarterback himself in college, very successful offensive coordinator in 2 stops. So he could have jumped in. He had the ability and the knowledge to jump in, but he said they need to hear it from one guy. So we'll see what happens with that whole head coach, offensive, defensive deal.
You know, a great example of that is once Tony Romo became the starting quarterback in Dallas, Jason Garrett became the offensive coordinator, his first full season as a starter in the NFL. And he had Wade Phillips as the head coach, Jason could do whatever he wanted to at the offense, right?
Yeah. And I will tell you, I've had conversations with Jason, and he said Wade left him alone. He was very appreciative of the fact that, and when I say leave him alone, it's not like the head coach comes down into your office and you say, hey, get out of here. We don't need your input. But he basically said, Wade let him do his thing. And he was very appreciative of that. And I think any offensive coordinator, play caller would be. I know Kellen Moore had this discussion with him. He was very appreciative of the fact that Jason let him do his thing. And Jason obviously had been a play caller. He was a head coach. You can do whatever you want. He said the only thing he would tell me occasionally was maybe it's the 4th quarter and he thinks the defense is getting tired on the other side. And he said, hey, they're getting a little tired over there. Let's pound the ball. But it wasn't jumping in on 3rd down plays and saying, hey, go with this. That can really, really be counterproductive for a play caller.
All right. With the number 4 overall pick, the Indianapolis Colts select Anthony Richardson, quarterback, University of Florida, 6'4", 244 pounds, ran a 4.43 40 with a 152 10-yard split with a 40.5 vertical and a 10.9 broad jump. The key number on Anthony Richardson, 13 starts in his college career.
Is that Mike Mamula, Phil? Remember Mike Mamula?
Yes.
Cody, I know you're up there in Philly. Are you too young for Mike Mamula?
They still reference him every few weeks here on sports radio here in Philly. So I am familiar.
I do think anytime somebody jumps off the charts with their test scores at the combine, Mike Mamula's name is coming up, right? The 13 starts really scare me. We saw that with Mitch Trubisky, right? I think he started 13, if I'm not mistaken, at North Carolina. And there's just not a big enough sample size there. I'll give you my notes on Anthony Richardson, and I hope he's not listening. So I've got all the, obviously the 4.43, the whole 9 yards. I said I would sit. He has to sit for a year. You're asking about the other guys. Can you play him? Can you not? He's not ready for NFL football. Certainly not as a rookie. He's a sidearm thrower, elbow drops, his right elbow drops as he's throwing, which makes him an inconsistent passer. Not a fluid passer, not great footwork for a guy that has great feet in terms of running 4.43, not great footwork in the pocket. He's stiff, crazy arm strength. I mean, you talk about a ball jumping out of a guy's hand. That thing, it's here, it's in his hand, and then it is downfield. So I got crazy arm strength, stiff front leg, needs more balance, which I'm sure they will work with him there. And then I said, my last comment was, does he stay another year? This was obviously pre-draft, but he was already going into the draft. But to me, that thing is always, how are you going to get coached? Is another year, who's going to coach you for another year? And his offensive coordinator is an offensive line coach. So, well, you get the experience, and I know Billy Napier is there, but I want to see a Josh McCown coaching the quarterbacks. And if that were the case, I tell Anthony Richardson, look, go back, get another year under your belt, learn from Josh McCown. But that wasn't the case there. But it's going to be interesting. To me, he's a real, as I think most would say, he's a real wild card. Now, the trump card is he does run 4.43. So obviously he's going to be used a lot in the running game. That can take the pressure off him. He's not going to be a drop back passer, certainly from the get-go. So we'll just have to see how it goes. And as you mentioned, Cody, hey, Shane Steichen is there. He had Jalen Hurts, but you're going to make a mistake if you just say, well, Jalen Hurts was this guy and he became this guy, with every guy that you think is just a runner and not as accurate as you'd like him to be. So we'll see where it goes. And I often say, a guy like Shane Steichen, right, who just got hired, Anthony Richardson is either going to get him a contract extension in 3 years, or he's going to get him fired. It's one of the two. If he becomes the guy that they were hoping he would be, Shane Steichen is getting an extension. And if he doesn't become that guy and you spin your wheels for 2-3 years, you're going to get fired.
What I like about Steichen is he was also with Justin Herbert. So he developed the offense around Herbert, and he had a successful rookie year with Steichen. Then he went to Philly and obviously molded it a little bit more around Jalen Hurts, including more of the run game. And obviously Hurts took off there. So that's why I think he'll be able to mold something around Anthony Richardson. Babe, everyone talks about the 54% completion percentage from Anthony Richardson in college last year. How difficult or how easy is it to teach that to a quarterback, and how long does that process normally take?
I think there's no question you can teach it. I'd like to see it taught in high school or in college. I hate
not as a first round pick.
Yeah, you get to the NFL and you say, well, we can teach them how to throw. I had a conversation with Phil Simms a while back, and I said, I don't even look at numbers really anymore. A guy completed 72% or whatnot. I said, they're 50% when they come out of locker room. Now, Phil had the 22 or 25 day in a Super Bowl. He's throwing the ball down the field. Right. Now, half of the passing game, the ball doesn't even cross the line of scrimmage. So again, you come out of the tunnel, and before the national anthem start, you've completed 50% of your balls. Now it's just, as the game starts, how many more will I complete? And to sit there at 53%, 54%, it's a little bit scary for me.
Cody, I know you have an opinion on how he should be used in Indianapolis and related to Dak Prescott.
Well, what I was thinking was, I think they're going to come in. It's going to be similar to how the Cowboys use Dak. They're going to go power run game, and good luck to any defense trying to stop the Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor zone read. Good luck stopping that. And so what Dak had success was something similar. Zeke on the power run game, and then he was able to play action there, make easy throws, and let him learn the position and grow into it. And obviously the Cowboys had a great season when Dak was a rookie. I think that's going to be the plan for Indy as well. What do you think about the possibility of an Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor run game? How are teams going to stop that?
That's going to be a handful, no question about it. And obviously, if you have that threat of the run and the quarterback threat of the run, and you're playing all these option plays and things of that nature, it does make the passing game easier for you. And quite honestly, the reads on all those pass run options, they're pretty simple. Linebacker steps up, we'll throw it behind him. Linebacker drops back, we're going to run it. So you're not reading the whole field. So for a younger quarterback, there's no question that's easier to play in that type of an offense. The other part that I think is making it easier, and I didn't say easy, easier for younger quarterbacks to step in and play, is the helmet. You've got a speaker in your headset, and that coach can sit there and walk you through the play and talk you through the play and the formation. If you get the formation wrong, and that guy can get in your ear, hey, no, it's trips whiz, whatever. He can talk to you up until obviously 15 seconds before the play clock is going to expire. But that's a huge advantage in today's NFL. And I'll go back to I believe it was a Monday night game, might have been a Sunday. Baker Mayfield played for the Rams and had been there a week.
It was a Thursday night game.
Thursday night game. There we go.
Thursday night. He got there Tuesday night and then leads him to the comeback win in the final 2 minutes on a Thursday night. Yeah. It was
there. Yep. Thank you, Bill, because I knew I liked the Analyst, and Aikman does Monday night, so I knew it couldn't be Monday night. No, I'm kidding. But if you don't have that ability to call the play into the speaker in your helmet. Again, I don't know how long they've been doing that now. What are we, 15 years or something? That never happens. Never happens. So again, these young quarterbacks are getting that help for 25 seconds before they have to shut it off. And that's just huge.
All right, let's move on to another quarterback from the SEC.
If I may quickly, Bill.
Yes, babe.
Just wrapping up Anthony Richardson.
Okay.
I know everybody said, well, Josh Allen was a 54% passer, and he became what he became. And if you're going to take a bunch of guys that complete 53% in today's college game and then say, well, Josh Allen did it, you're going to go broke, right? And if you look at Josh Allen, which I did, I went back this year. I'd seen him coming out, but then I went back this year to look. He throws nothing like he did at Wyoming. His delivery is different. He overstrided. I mean, his stride was like a baseball pitcher at Wyoming. And that's obviously being shortened down, which helps your accuracy. So the big thing on the accuracy is usually the footwork. And that's where I didn't like Anthony Richardson's footwork, and Will Levis to an extent, but those things are all going to get taken care of at the NFL level. So you can become a little bit of a different passer at the NFL level if you have the right coach.
And which brings us to the 33rd overall pick. In the second round, the Tennessee Titans take Will Levis, another SEC quarterback who has prototype size at 6'4", 229 pounds. What's your assessment of Will Levis?
You ready? Big arm, needs to work on touch, muscle bound. I said I wouldn't allow him in the weight room for 6 months. You don't see muscle bound quarterbacks, right? You don't see good free throw shooters that are muscle bound, right? There's a little fluidity to them. I'm not letting him touch a weight for 6 months. Stiff lower body. I said tight delivery, really, it's compact delivery, which is good. He's tough. Now, one thing about Will Levis, he did play under center. A lot of these guys only played shotgun. He played under center. He was with Liam Cohen, right, for a year. And I guess Cohen will be back this year, I believe. But so they played a little bit under center. So you're not teaching him that aspect of the game. That's good. Good ball security in the pocket. I like the way he protected the ball when things were collapsing. That's important. Short arms the ball a little bit. And I think that stems from, again, being a little, in my mind, too muscle bound. Wasn't there a picture on Twitter or something that kind of went viral of him shirt off? And
yeah, he likes showing off the guns. So good luck keeping him out of the weight room.
Well, I would like showing off my guns if they look like that too, but I don't like it for my quarterback. I want a little fluidity there. So, hey, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and I don't get hung up on that. But when you look at it, he had a 4 touchdown, no interception game against Northern Illinois. So if you take the Northern Illinois game away, you're looking at 15 and 10, and that's not so great. And just so you know, Northern Illinois is not on the schedule this year in the NFL. Tendency to occasionally guide the ball. Good tackler. If you watch a couple of interceptions, he lit people up like Andrew Luck. I always loved Andrew Luck throwing an interception because he was going to light somebody up. So Will Levis was that guy. Of course, at his size,
exactly.
He should be able to do that.
Right. Show off how strong he is.
But it's bad too when if I turned in a scouting report, Cody and Bill, and I said about the quarterback, hey, really good tackler. They're like, okay, well, why was he tackling people? Well, he threw interceptions.
Exactly.
So 2021, not novel here, better than 22. He had some injuries last year, obviously. And then my last comment was big arm, and he's got a tremendous arm, but not a great deep thrower. And that can be worked on again. You can teach a guy how to get a little more touch on that deep ball. But that was my Will Levis.
Well, and Cody, we can understand why he had a better 2021 than he did a 2022, because who was snapping the football to him in 2021? That would be one Luke Fortner, of course.
Bill's favorite player in the league, of
I
course.
know.
All right. So I worked a pro day with David Carr, NFL Network analyst, and he was talking about Will Levis. We were discussing him, and he said he has a fastball, but he doesn't have anything else off speed. So you mentioned the touch, babe. Again, I'm asking you as someone who teaches young quarterbacks, how difficult is that to work on, learning the touch, being able to drop it in between a safety and a linebacker? Because obviously that's a huge factor in the NFL.
Yeah, and you're making a leap of faith that whoever I is, can teach this guy that ball. And my guess is he's been coached along the way. And if somebody else hasn't got it out of him, how are you going to get it out of him? But
Right.
I do say this. I can teach a guy, or I hope to be able to teach a guy with a big arm how to take a little off it, and we can work on some touch. I cannot take the guy with the puss arm that cannot throw a cross-field comeback and teach him how to have a big arm, right? It was like I always said about Des Bryant. Des Bryant was too tough for his own good. He would fight for an extra 3 inches and just get drilled. You know, he's got a guy on his ankle, guy around his waist, and he's going to get an extra 3 inches, right, before he goes down. And then 5 guys are drilling him in the back and the ball comes out. So, but I'd rather take that guy and say, okay, Des, love the competitiveness, love the toughness, but let's just catch it and go down. Let's put some tape on of Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt in that Greatest Show on Turf, and they catch that in route. Then they hit the ground because safeties were coming. Yeah. So it gets back to the same thing with quarterbacks. Give me the guy with the big arm. I can hope to teach him how to take a little off it, but I can't teach the other guy how to have a big arm.
Okay, let's move to the third round. And how about this is another SEC quarterback out of Tennessee, Hendon Hooker, who, of course, was injured late in the season last year, began his career at Virginia Tech and then transferred to Tennessee. If you're looking for productivity in the college ranks, Hooker, combine his stats, Va-Tech and Tennessee, he threw 12 interceptions and had 80 touchdown passes. Bryce Young at Alabama, 12 interceptions, 80 touchdown passes. CJ Stroud at Ohio State, 12 interceptions, 85 touchdowns. Very similar to the top 2 guys in the entire draft. And he went in the 3rd round to the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, and obviously coming off a knee injury, dropped him down a little bit, I'm sure, but I really liked him. I mean, I really liked him. I'll give you my quick notes on him. Good, not great runner, smooth stroke, not a big arm, but he has enough arm. Tricked up Josh Heupel offense, spins it nicely, tough, seems to process things well. So I got done with his tape and I was extremely impressed. And you mentioned the other 2 guys, Stroud and Bryce Young. He didn't have that kind of talent around him. Now, Tennessee was good, but they did not have 5 first-round receivers like CJ Stroud got to throw to. You know, Bryce Young had Devontae Smith. He had some other guys in there, and he did not have those guys. But I really liked him. Really liked him.
Let me ask you about that Josh Heupel offense. And again, I loved it. I'm with you. Putting those receivers out wide on the hashes, to me, it just seemed like super easy throws for the quarterback. Like he was playing point guard. He can kind of go anywhere. What did you make of that offense? And how will Hooker kind of be able to transition when an offense might not be that easy in the pros?
Yeah, it's definitely a different style of offense. But I always say this too. People say, well, yeah, he had 58 touchdown passes and no interceptions, but that was a tricked up offense. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't other people run that offense?
Yeah.
But there's a little bit to that, but you still got to throw the ball. You still got to place it. And I really, again, was impressed with his delivery. And when I talk about delivery or smooth stroke or whatever, it's not that you have to look pretty throwing the ball. It's like Jim Furyk, right? That golf swing is ugly, but the results sure are good. But when you've got that smooth delivery or the good stroke or whatever you want to call it, there's just a lot less that can go wrong, right? There's a lot more consistency to your passes. And I saw that in Hooker. And again, I was really impressed with him to the point where I had him up almost with those top guys. And again, I know he's coming off that knee injury, but I liked what I saw.
What about this, babe? It sounds like, according to Dan Campbell, it's going to be a redshirt year for Hooker, which means he's not going to play until he's 26 years old, as it will be his first meaningful NFL time. What does that tell you about his chances of succeeding?
Well, it does nothing in my mind to cloud if you tell me, well, he's going to be 26 when he becomes a starter, and we're only going to get 10 years out of him because he'll be 36. So, okay, great. You telling me I've got a guy to play quarterback for me at a high level for the next 10 years? I'm all over that. So the age thing did not bother me. You're going to get a more mature player in terms of a more mature human being. You know, some of these guys come out, they're 20 years old. I believe Anthony Richardson, did he just turn 21 or?
Yeah, this week.
This week. Okay, well, there we go. So,
Right.
you know, you're just more mature in your life. And I think, again, I'll go back to, I love these guys sitting. I think the greatest thing in the world for him is to watch Jared Goff, who has been to a Super Bowl, operate. You learn from him. That's not to say he's going to take over the next year. As a matter of fact, Detroit would hope he doesn't take over the next year. Detroit is hoping they win the Super Bowl. And I know you're thinking they're going to, Cody.
Almost. I'm on the Lions bandwagon this year. If they fail me this year and don't make the playoffs, I'm jumping off. I already told you I'm jumping off the bandwagon.
I love it. I love it.
And by the way,
Dan Campbell's, you got to appreciate the Fighting Dan Campbell's, Cody.
Love them.
and by the way, not to make this the Tony Romo show, but how old was Tony Romo when he first got his first start in the NFL? He was 26 years old.
Here we go.
All right, it brings us to yet another SEC quarterback as we get into the third day of the draft. In the fourth round, number 128 overall, the Los Angeles Rams select Stetson Bennett, the quarterback from two-time national champion Georgia. And babe, he went higher than a lot of the so-called draft experts thought he might be drafted. A lot higher.
He did. And I'm looking for my notes and I can't find them on Stetson Bennett, but I really don't need them because obviously we saw a lot of Georgia football and I remember what I put down. But I think what hurt Stetson Bennett is his story, right? Walk on, 8th on the depth chart, went to a junior college, came back, 7th on the depth chart. So I think all that has kind of knocked down what he really was about. And when you look at the performance, and as I said, don't overlook productivity, right? My number one thing, he played in 4 college football playoff games. He was the MVP in each of those games. He led them back in this last year in 2022. They were down to Ohio State. People forget that. Cody doesn't forget that.
I didn't forget it. It was 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah. I mean, so you say, hey, game on the line. He takes over the game. I always remember talking to Ron Wolf, the great Hall of Fame GM started with the Raiders, finished with the Green Bay Packers, was with the New York Jets at one point. But anyway, I was at training camp and he was down there. I think he was friends with Parcells, and Parcells was the head coach for the Cowboys. But remember, Ron Wolf was a guy in Green Bay that traded a first-round pick for a second-round pick from the previous year, a quarterback named Brett Favre. And everybody was like, you just gave up a first-rounder for a guy that went 1 of 5 with 2 interceptions in Atlanta? So I said, what did you see in Favre? He wanted to draft him, by the way, at the New York Jets. Yeah. Atlanta took him a pick before. He took Browning Nagel, then Ron Wolf did. But he wanted to take, so he had his eye on Favre all the time. Anyway, I said, what did you see in Favre? He said he just tilted the field. And he said, the other thing I look for when I go to a game, when I go scout a game, the end of the game, who does the coach put the ball in the hands of? He said, they know their players better than I know their players. And the ball was in Stetson Bennett's hand. Now, obviously, he had to throw it out of the hand, but it wasn't like, he had Herschel Walker in that backfield and they ran for 58 yards of the 70 yards on the drive. He was leading them back. The other part is he can really, I think he can really zip the ball. He can spin it. Again, it goes back to the narrative. Great story, right? A-string quarterback, leaves, always wanted to play for Georgia, comes back, he's 7th string. So it kind of knocked him down, I feel like. But when you just put on the tape and get away from the fact that, well, Georgia had all these great players and he didn't have to do anything. He did have to do things. Also, he played in 2 national championship games, won them both, and was the MVP in both of those games. So I just think there's a lot to like about Stetson Bennett.
You know what raised his stock post-draft?
Tell me.
It was him being drafted by Sean McVay in the 4th round.
Oh,
his stock went way up after the draft.
Well, then everybody said, hey, and I do believe this. again, I'll get back to Bill Parcells. We're having a discussion, and he said in his New Jersey accent, everybody's afraid they're going to miss out on the next Peyton Manning. So all these guys get drafted way at the top of the draft. That really shouldn't be, right? But every team is thinking, boy, this guy could be Peyton Manning, just like Cody, right? Anthony Richardson. Hey, this guy could be Josh Allen. And then you find out, he really wasn't Peyton Manning. And I think this year, everybody was looking for the Brock Purdy in the draft. And so all these guys that were, slated to go maybe 5th, 6th, 7th round or free agents, they moved up. And I think I do believe this. I think some of these teams thought, oh man, this could be Brock Purdy. He could be the guy that gets us through a season or what have you. And that's my philosophy on that. What do you guys think on that?
I like it. I like it. And you know who the Brock Purdy of this draft from the quarterback standpoint is? The last quarterback that was taken in this draft?
You're going to say Max Duggan?
Max Duggan from TCU by the Los Angeles Chargers in the 7th round, 239 overall.
Hey, Kellen Moore texted me after the draft and said, hey, do you have Sonny Dykes' number? And he knew I was friends with Sonny Dykes. And I said, yeah. I said, what's up? And he said, well, we're going to install the TCU offense because they drafted 3 players. The Chargers did from TCU. Now, I don't think he's really installing it, but
that's right. 2 wide receivers, Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis, and the quarterback, Max Duggan.
Yeah. Hey, talking about that too quickly, I was listening to a show. It wasn't your show because you guys are too smart for this, but they were just talking, hey, these guys get there and they've never had any adversity. They've always been the best player. They've always been the guy. And you look at the Super Bowl from this past year, right? Now, Patrick Mahomes may have been that guy. Jalen Hurts, he was not that guy. He got beat out at Alabama. He goes to Oklahoma and everybody says, well, he's not a great passer. And then he goes to Philly and everybody thought Howie Roseman is an idiot for taking this guy in the 2nd round. You've already got Carson Wentz. And so he dealt with some adversity. Look at the 2 quarterbacks in the national championship game this past year. Max Duggan wasn't even supposed to be playing. Chandler Morris, as you know, he gets hurt in the opening game and they're forced to go with Max Duggan. And Max Duggan, again, takes TCU to the national championship game. And we talked about Bennett Stetson and his journey, right? Tell me he didn't overcome some adversity. So all these guys have adversity. I mean, there's very few that don't overcome something.
Agreed. Hey, babe, love your perspective. Before we let you go, because we're just a little bit past the 49-minute mark that Bill Jones promised. A few weeks ago, you hosted the annual Live Like Luke fundraiser in Coffee with Celebrities, which is to honor your son, Luke, who we lost in 2019 way too soon. First of all, how was the event? And second of all, partially for me and others who weren't able to attend, how can we donate to Luke's cause?
Well, that's first of all, that's not second, Cody.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, exactly.
You're burying the lead there. But you can, if you want to donate, there is a website on UTEP. But if you just Google, anyone out there wants to Google Luke Laufenberg, UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso, Luke Laufenberg, UTEP Fight Fund, that will come up and you'll be able to just work your way through it. Real simple there. So perfect. Luke Laufenberg Fight Fund, UTEP, you put those words in and it'll be real simple. So the coffee was great. We had, I'm going to leave some people out here. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time, but Jason Garrett, Troy Aikman, Roger Staubach. So we had our quarterback contingent there. Marty Turco, goalie from the Dallas Stars, former goalie for the Dallas Stars. DeMarcus Ware, who will be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Nice. We had former Mayor Ron Kirk, had a whole bunch of Mark Stepnoski, 5-time Pro Bowler, former Cowboy. So we had a whole bunch of people out there, but I have to tell you one great story. So now we're going to go 52 minutes.
That's okay. I got time. It's your workout, so it's fine.
So I'm up there and I'm giving my remarks from the podium. And we have about 90 people there in the audience and they're all standing up. Not giving me a standing ovation, but we don't have seats necessarily. We like a mix and mingle. So Justin Garrett is a young man who played at UTEP, wide receiver, who was a friend of Luke's. When Luke passed, the program to this day, they will give out the number 2, which was going to be Luke's number, which was his number at the time. They give out the number 2 to a deserving player who exemplifies the fight and leadership that Luke did. So Justin Garrett wore it for 2 years. Not only did he wear the number 2, he put Laufenberg across the back of the jersey. Matter of fact, Troy Aikman came up to him and said, "You're that guy?" And he said, I cannot tell you. He said, there aren't many kids that would take their name off a jersey to put another guy's. The number 2 was passed down. You did not have to put Laufenberg across the jersey. And he did that. So Justin was there. I was giving him a little award at the event, but he's standing out there in the audience and he's got a UTEP Adidas golf shirt on. And on the sleeve, all the coaches and they have Luke on the sleeve embroidered in there. And Justin is now working in the athletic department for the football office. So he's finished with his playing career. He's standing there, guy next to him. He tells me the story after, says, "Hey, I'd like to get one of those shirts. Where can I get one of those shirts?" He said, "If you give me your address, I'll get one mailed to you." Finally, he thought, "Oh, I'll just give him my shirt." So he goes out, changes his shirt in the parking lot, hands this guy his shirt and said, "You know what? It's right out of the box. I've worn it for 2 hours. Just take this one." It was Roger Staubach.
Wow.
I said, "Did you know it was Roger?" And he said, "I thought it might be, but Justin's 25 years old, right?" And he said, "I thought it might be. Then I found out somebody came up and said, 'Hey, that's Roger Staubach.'" So I said to Justin Garrett, the young man, I said, "Justin, you have the story to tell your grandchildren. I literally gave the shirt off my back to Roger Staubach."
Too good. Too good.
Oh, I love it. And I love the fact he wore Luke's name, Laufenberg name, on his jersey, in particular, because for every UTEP game, an announcer, as we've done games, you've got a whole list of things that you can talk about during the game. Well, when a guy that's wearing the name Laufenberg makes a play in that game, and his name is not Laufenberg, then that leads the announcers to tell Luke's story. And so It's just a beautiful thing that he went the extra mile and put Laufenberg on his jersey, because no telling how many more people got to hear the story of Luke. And
Yeah.
I'm happy that Cody brought it up here, so that, and Cody, as you edited this, now, when you edit this, you can put this at the beginning of the podcast, and then you have my permission to do that.
One more quick story for you. So Luke is there at UTEP. They're there in the spring. Spring ball hadn't started, but they're getting together quarterbacks and receivers and just throwing on their own. Quarterback didn't show. And Justin Garrett tells the story, because when he went up to the podium for a couple of remarks, he said, Luke said, "Oh, that's okay." He said, I'll just throw with my dad when I get home." And Justin said, who's your dad? It's like, most of those kids do not come home and throw to a guy. And so it got a big chuckle. And then he said, "Well, my dad used to play in the NFL, blah, 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 blah." And I told the audience when I got back up, I said, there were a lot of, I told Luke that we were doing bad ball drills. I said, in actuality, I was trying to put it right on the money to him, but balls are all left behind him. And I said, "Luke, this is what's going to happen. They're not all going to be perfect. I can throw you the perfect pass, but that's not reality."
That's not doing you any good.
No.
All right.
Okay, quick question for you guys. Now that I've done the podcast, do I have to listen to the podcast on the elliptical?
I think
obviously. We know this is going to be the most listened to podcast on Babe Laufenberg's elliptical.
Hey, if it goes 50 minutes, I'm going to do 100-minute elliptical, because I'm going to listen to it twice.
There you go. That's right. All right, Babe, we appreciate it. We need to get you on again before the season and talk Cowboys football.
I'd love to. You guys know I'm big fans of jonesing for football.
All right. Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Babe. And we will talk at you next time here on Jonesing for Football. Boom.
Boom.
Stop
I
it.
did it.
There we go.
9 minutes.
Oh,
Amazing.
Longest workout of the year right here.
look at that. You're gonna have to edit it